الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم لك الحمد كله كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك وعظيم سلطانك. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد, we begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We praise Him because He is worthy of praise, and we see His worthiness of praise. We recognize it through His beautiful names and attributes, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send His peace and blessings upon the last and final messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his family and his companions and all those who follow him until the day of judgment. Ameen. So we had a switcheroo. Sheikh Hassan Alwan was supposed to give the talk today, but he has a test coming up, so he asked me if we could switch weeks. So I was supposed to go next week. I'm going to go this week and speak about Abdullah ibn Abbas, and he will come next week inshallah and talk about Nusaybah bint Ka'b, who is also an interesting companion. So Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, a very well-known name. He is well-known because he is very influential when it comes to the field of knowledge. He was a scholar. He is called the Habir of the Ummah, the scholar. And he's been called the Bahr, the ocean, because he is an ocean of knowledge. Anyone who knows Ibn Abbas, anyone who's read about Ibn Abbas, anyone who has seen the opinions of Ibn Abbas know that this is really a scholar. And one of the top-notch scholars. He was born about 3 years before the Hijrah. So he's a younger companion in terms of the time of the Prophet ﷺ. So when they did the Hijrah, he was only 3 years old, but his family didn't do the Hijrah. It was later on where he went, inshallah, as we will get to. Ibn Abbas, he's the son of Abbas. Abbas, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. So Ibn Abbas is the cousin of our Prophet ﷺ. He's described as being tall, well-built, lighter skin, handsome, and of course, extremely, extremely knowledgeable. And he spent about 30 months learning from the Prophet ﷺ directly. So his family was, as he describes, among the people who are described in Surah An-Nisa, وَالْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ وَالْوِلْدَانِ. إِلَّا الْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ وَالنِّسَاءِ وَالْوِلْدَانِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says it's an obligation for the companions, the Muslims, to do immigration to Medina. So it was required for anyone in Mecca or anyone in any place in the Muslim lands to go and do hijrah and follow the Prophet ﷺ. And the reason why it's an obligation is you can imagine at that time, numbers were very important. The number was crucial. It was critical because they were so little in number, they needed every able-bodied person to come and help. So it was an obligation. However, some of the companions, especially those in Mecca, were prevented. They were prevented from leaving by their families, by their tribes, by the leadership of Quraysh. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala excuses those people in Surah An-Nisa when He says, إِلَّا الْمُسْتَضْعَفِينَ مِنَ الرِّجَالِ وَالنِّسَاءِ وَالْوِلْدَانِ لَا يَسْتَطِيعُونَ حِيلَةً وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ سَبِيلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has excused these people. So his family eventually went and immigrated to Medina after the conquest of Mecca. So Ibn Abbas was studying directly under the Prophet ﷺ for about 30 months. So between the time of immigration and the time of the death of the Prophet ﷺ, a little over 2 years, 2.5 years, 30 months. But in those 30 months, you can imagine learning under the Prophet ﷺ directly. Like Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an. He memorized thousands of hadith in the 3 years or so he was with the Prophet ﷺ. And same thing with Ibn Abbas. He took an amount of knowledge in those 2.5 years. Now keep in mind, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, he was in his early teens. Somewhere between 13 to 15 years old. That was his age. And by that time, he had taken enough knowledge to be considered what we call today a scholar. Why? Because he dedicated that time. And he learned under the right person. There are many teachers out there, and you see them in universities, I mean, if you were to count all the universities in America and how many teachers or professors are employed, I mean, you have thousands. You have thousands. But not everyone is the same level. Not everyone is the same caliber when it comes to knowledge. I have taken classes that were so boring, that were so poorly administered, that you leave not knowing anything new. Literally, spent 4.5 months or so, and you learn absolutely nothing. And I have been in classes where the teacher is so effective in teaching, I kid you not, the dumb person becomes a person who understands that subject. You find this and you find that. So it's crucial that when you learn under someone, you learn under someone who is very strong in what they know and very effective in the way they present that information. Ibn Abbas was someone who is known to have loved fragrance, utur, cologne. In fact, it's said that when Ibn Abbas would walk in the streets, from how beautiful he smelled, it would keep, the remnants would stay behind him. And it said that when he would pass by, the women in their homes would start saying, is musk passing by, or is that Ibn Abbas? Radiyallahu ta'ala an. He was known to do that. And his students observed that before he would enter his home, he would put fragrance on him. Before entering, not leaving, because we normally put it on before we leave. Ibn Abbas would do it before entering his home. So his students asked him, why are you doing that? Normally, before we leave, we put it on. We want people to, smell nice in public. He said that, I expect my wife to be prepared for me when I come home. So I make it an obligation upon myself for me to be prepared to meet her once I come back. So as he likes his wife to be beautified, he beautifies himself so his wife can enjoy that as well. When it comes to his life, really, it's so hard to be like Ibn Abbas. I mean, any of these companions, it's very hard. Puts a challenge. But Ibn Abbas, because he is an expert, and he put the thousands and thousands of hours it needs to become, who he was. Not everyone can do that. And he had the tools. For example, he was the student of the Prophet ﷺ. He was also the student of Umar and Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman and Ali. And he was a student of Zayd ibn Thabit and Ibn Mas'ud. He was taking from all of these people, although he was at the same level as many of them. So how do you benefit from such a life? And what I took is I pinpointed a few things. First, how the Prophet ﷺ raised him. It's very important because we could at least do that with our kids or with our grandkids. Because grandparents do have an effect on their grandchildren. How the Prophet ﷺ engaged with him. So we have one hadith, or maybe variations of hadith, in which it's narrated the Prophet ﷺ made dua for Ibn Abbas. And he said, Allahumma faqihhu fi din wa alimhu ta'wil. Oh Allah, give him fiqh, understanding of the faith, and teach him interpretation of the Quran. And he was exactly that. He didn't have as many hadith memorized as Abu Hurairah, right? But he was absolutely phenomenal when it comes to fiqh, and phenomenal when it comes to tafsir. If Ibn Abbas said, and we know that this is an authentic narration from Ibn Abbas, we know that it's most likely the correct opinion. So the Prophet ﷺ made dua for him. Make dua for your kids, for your grandkids, even for yourself. Ask Allah to give you fiqh in religion, understanding of it, and to teach you the tafsir of the Quran. Always make that dua every day, and do it for your kids as well. Another incident, or another recorded hadith, in which the Prophet ﷺ teaches Ibn Abbas, it's a very beautiful hadith and one of the most comprehensive hadith. It is a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ says, Ya ghulam, u'allimuka kalimat, ihfadillah yahfadk, ihfadillah tajidhu tujak. إذا سألت فاسأل الله وإذا استعنت فاستعن بالله واعلم أن الأمة لو اجتمعوا على أن ينفعوك بشيء لن ينفعوك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله لك وإذا اجتمعوا على أن يضروك بشيء لم يضروك إلا بشيء قد كتب الله عليك رفعت الأقلام وجفت الصحف. This hadith is, you could put a series out just for this hadith, but take the teaching of the Prophet ﷺ, what he's teaching this young individual. Right? And Ibn Abbas would sometimes spend the night at the Prophet ﷺ's home. So he was like a child to the Prophet ﷺ, one of his kids. Look at what he's teaching him. He says, O young boy, O young man, protect Allah and Allah will protect you. Meaning, protect Allah by fulfilling your obligations. Do that and know that Allah will reward you by protecting you yourself. And it said that Ibn Hasan al-Basri, radiyallahu ta'ala an, when he was in old age, he was on a boat, a small boat, and that boat got stuck somehow. So they said he's around 80 years old now. He says he dove into the water, untied the boat, and went back up. And the people on the boat were shocked. I mean, this is an old man. And they asked him, how did you do that? How do you have the strength? He said, I protected Allah when I was little, when I was young, so Allah is protecting me when I'm older. This is what we need to teach our kids. Protect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He will protect you. If you protect Allah, you'll find Him in front of you. Again, a metaphor, analogy, to tell us that our challenges that are ahead of us, you find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there waiting for you once those challenges come at you. There's a very beautiful saying. I don't know this to be a hadith or even a saying of the scholar, but it's very beautiful. It says that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings you to a challenge, He brought you there to get you out of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not present anything to a person except that He intends to take that person out of that challenge. But after taking the fruits and the wisdom and the knowledge that they can take because of that challenge. Does that make sense? I see the face is a little bit confused. Meaning anything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throws at you in your way, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala means to take you out of it. But it's a teaching process, a learning process. That's what it is. So protect Allah, you'll find Him in front of you. If you ask, then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you ask, then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many parents do you know teach their kids this? If you ask someone, then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very profound, very beautiful, because here the Prophet ﷺ is teaching Ibn Abbas how to have a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's teaching him that if you do what you're supposed to do, you will get something in return. The relationship between the individual and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not one way. It's not us doing things and not getting anything in return. This is paganism. That's what happens with them. They are the ones who present food, sacrifice rituals for their idols, for their false gods, and don't expect anything in return. This is paganism. Because when you look at, for example, Greek mythology, if you look at Zeus and Hercules and Aphrodite and all of these names, when you pick, and they made movies out of this. What are these false deities doing? What are they doing? They are going about their own business. They're dealing with one another. They don't care about what's going on earth. They don't care about those who worship them. That's just not the relationship. Rather, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in the Quran, the Prophet ﷺ is teaching Ibn Abbas that when you do something, expect something in return. When you do a good deed, expect something good in return. That is part of the relationship. Now you have some people, especially the younger ones who are practicing and they're very enthusiastic. They say, I don't want anything from Allah. I just want to love Him. That's it. I'm doing Him and doing this because I love Him. That's it. Well, it's not the way the Quran teaches us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in the Quran that if you do good deeds, there's paradise. He's giving you that. And it's important to understand this, and it's important to look for this in your lives. Because the more you can see Allah rewarding you in your life, the more you'll love Him. The more you'll engage with Him. And therefore, the closer you will become to Him. And that is the goal. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us and promises to give us, what He's doing is building that relationship between you and Him. And here the Prophet ﷺ is teaching the same thing. If you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's also teaching another thing. Another very important thing. Depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't depend on other people. Now, we have relationships. We have friendships. We have acquaintances. No doubt that Allah created this world in a way where we need one another. But there's a difference between recognizing that we work together in order to bring about results, and a difference between depending upon other people. Because when you depend upon others, they'll disappoint you sooner or later. No matter how much they love you. Why? It's not because they mean to hurt you. But we are human beings. We are limited. We feel fatigue. We make mistakes. But Allah never does that. Allah doesn't make mistakes. He never gets tired. On the contrary, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves it when a person asks Him. He continues to ask Him, and ask Him, and ask Him. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't answer the dua of someone because He loves to hear the person's voice. To build that relationship, if you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, only depend on Him. If you need to do something else, if you need someone else's help, then remember that Allah created the world in that manner. But our dependence is on Him first and foremost. If you ask, and ask Allah, and if you seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we have the middle verse in Surah Al-Fatiha, which I talk about quite a bit. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. It is you alone who we worship, and it is you alone we seek help from. This portion, if you seek help, and then seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is half of faith. That is half of faith, half of the Quran, half of a person's relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, that is the way He relates to us. That is His relationship with us, is that He helps us. When we need something, He sends the help. And He took the first step in helping us. He made the first step, or took the first step in that relationship between Allah and the individual. And that is how He created us, and He gave us tools. He gave us knowledge. He gave us the ability to learn. He gave us senses to look around you and to build that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He sent messengers and He sent books so that we find happiness. If you want happiness, then according to Islamic spirituality, if you want happiness, follow guidance. Because these two are pairs. You cannot be on guidance without feeling a sense of happiness, content. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then He tells him a very interesting theological point, and somewhat confusing to many people. He says, know that if all of mankind were to gather to help you in something, they cannot help you except what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written for you. And if the entire human race gathers to harm you, then they cannot harm you except with something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written upon you. This is the reality. How do we benefit from this? Especially when you look at, this concept of asbab. There are means of reaching something. No one got here magically. No one snapped their finger and got here. You had to take a car and transportation and etc. to come here. You had to put the effort. What the Prophet ﷺ is teaching Ibn Abbas here is that everything first and foremost is initiated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and solved by Him. Therefore, put emphasis on what I taught you in the beginning. Protect Allah, He will protect you. Protect Allah, and He will protect you. How many people spend hours upon hours, years after years, trying to achieve something and they are unable to achieve it? And how many people have been attacked left and right by enemies, yet they come out on top? Like Khalid ibn Walid, who we spoke about a few weeks ago. He says, I entered hundreds of battles. And there were plenty of times where I thought, that's it, I'm dead. I'm surrounded by the enemies. Yet I somehow get out. Somehow, magically. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is protecting him for a greater cause and for a greater reason. This is what the Prophet ﷺ is teaching Ibn Abbas. This is how he is raising him. So we take from the experience and the life of Ibn Abbas how we can raise our kids by teaching them these values. It is important and it is effective. Now, we have the challenge of dealing with, the Western context, liberalism, me, myself, and I, the selfishness, etc. Never underestimate the power of the words of a parent. Never underestimate it. They might seem to ignore it. They might seem like they don't care. They might seem like, whatever. And I question all of this, but know that your words are being planted in their hearts. And most parents who are trying to raise their kids on faith, their struggle, or the reason why they become so frustrated, is that they don't see the fruits of their efforts, or that they don't know how to water that seed. But don't forget, you planted that seed. Sooner or later, it'll blossom. And if you are having difficulty in watering that seed, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to water. In fact, that is really the roots. Asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do that, because faith is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ لَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet ﷺ after the death of Abu Talib. The Prophet ﷺ tried with him year after year. And Abu Talib was someone who's defended the Prophet ﷺ, defended Islam. He did a big favor for the Muslims. An unrivaled favor at that time for the Muslims. Yet, he passed away on disbelief. And he's seeing the Prophet ﷺ. He's hearing the Quran. So you can imagine the sorrow of the Prophet ﷺ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells him, you don't guide who you love. Allah guides whom He wills. And He knows who to guide and who not to guide. There's a wisdom behind it. It's not random. So seek the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through your dua, and ask Allah to guide the kids. Your kids or your grandkids, and even yourself. So the first lesson that we take from the life of Ibn Abbas is how the Prophet ﷺ raised him. And we should take from that how to raise our kids. Now, another incident in the life of Ibn Abbas that's very important, very beneficial for our times, is that Ibn Abbas was there when the whole civil war occurred, and the assassination of Uthman, assassination of Ali radiallahu anh. As you know, during this time, a group called the Khawarij appeared. The Khawarij are like the present-day ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They are they are ultra-conservatives. They are very aggressive, extremist. They're very extreme in their interpretation of the Quran. They lack scholarship, and they're very violent. So these Khawarij, the same people who killed Uthman and eventually killed Ali radiallahu anhuma, they were present during the time of Ibn Abbas. And they were causing problems. So Ali radiallahu anh wanted to send an army to attack them. Ibn Abbas was there and said, wait, let me go talk to them first. Let me go talk to them first, and then after that, do what you want. So Ali agreed. Ibn Abbas goes, and by the way, these are, as we've seen in our times, these are violent people. They are people who killed Uthman. Blood to them means nothing. It means nothing. So Ibn Abbas, having the courage to go and talk to them, says something about his character. He was extremely courageous. So he goes to them, and there were several thousand. I don't know the number, but they were quite a bit. He goes to them, and they know who he is. Ibn Abbas isn't someone who's unknown. He goes and say, Ibn Abbas, what are you doing here? And they look at him, and Ibn Abbas is wearing very nice clothing. So they tell Ibn Abbas, what is this clothing you're wearing? Kind of reprimanding him, rejecting this. What are you doing? He says, I saw the Prophet ﷺ wearing a thobe from Yemen. In a very nice, very well-fitted, high-quality thobe. Because Yemen at that time was a civilization. It was a very strong civilization, and a pluralistic civilization. There were Jews, there were Christians, and there were pagans as well. So they said, okay, what do you want? He said, what's your deal? Why are you doing all that you're doing? They said that we have three things against Ali radiallahu anh. Number one, حكم الرجال. He used people to derive rulings and derive judgment. And that was a problem to them. They were saying that it is only Allah who is allowed to give rulings and to give judgments. And if we take judgment from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His sources, that is an act of disbelief. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. And whoever doesn't rule by the judgment of Allah, then they are disbelievers. Okay, what else? They said he attacked an army and they didn't take the spoils, nor did they take the sabi, as they're called. They didn't take the prisoners as slaves. And their problem was that if they were disbelievers, then this is halal for them. And they didn't take what Allah has made rightful for them. And if they are believers, meaning if they didn't take the spoils because they are believers, that means they fought who they are not allowed to fight. And that is problematic. Number 3, which is, let me just remember here. Yes, when Ali and I believe Muawiyah came together to come to agreement, Ali wrote Amir al-Mu'mineen, the leader of the believers. So they said, take that off. We still haven't decided that yet. There's still a civil war going on. So he took it off. And they said, if he's not the leader of the believers, then he is the leader of disbelievers. And that is their argument. Now, if you were to pose these questions to the average Muslim, most of them are not going to be able to respond. So when you have a lot of Westerners and Easterners joining ISIS, right? It's not because they're insane. It's because they lack knowledge. And when ISIS would throw these videos out and put these quotes from the Quran and Hadith and scholars, right? And these people aren't founded in knowledge, and they don't have a resource to go back to that is knowledgeable, they become convinced. Like these individuals. And it was a big fitna, by the way. Just like today, parents were afraid their kids were going to go and join ISIS, right? Back then, they were afraid of the same thing. I mean, you have passages where parents say, we tied our kids so that we were afraid they were going to leave. We tied them and imprisoned them because we were afraid they were going to go leave and join these people. Very similar to that time. So you can see why we need knowledge and why we need to invest in that and why we need to teach our kids knowledge so that we don't have to deal with these things. Now Ibn Abbas responds. Now when you have a scholar, it's very easy to refute these things. It's very easy to see through them when most of society does not see through it. Ibn Abbas says, as for the first one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us to make judgment, right? Bring people who are experienced, experts in whatever field, and make judgment based on what they consider to be correct. And that is in what's called sayd, game. So in Mecca, if you go to Mecca, you're doing Umrah, and you accidentally kill or you purposefully kill an animal. The expiation for that is that either there is an equivalent animal that you give in charity. So for example, if someone kills a deer, they have to give a sheep as charity. If someone kills a rabbit, they have to give a sheep in charity. If there is no text in terms of the animal that was killed, then you have two people come and say, okay, the value of this animal is so-and-so, the equivalent is this or that. The point is, you bring individuals to make the judgment and make the ruling. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirmed that. And another example is when it comes to problems in marriage. وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا فَبَعَثُوا حَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهِ وَحَكَمًا مِنْ أَهْلِهَا. A division in marriage, send a wise person from his family and a wise person from her family to come to terms, to come to agreement. So Ibn Abbas says, do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give precedence to the blood of an animal over the blood of human beings? Meaning, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has dedicated us to preserve the blood of this game or these animals in Mecca, then would He not send us to preserve the blood of human beings? And he said, does this make sense? They said, yes, we agree. Next. And he said, as for the battle that happened, do you accept taking Aisha radiallahu anha, the mother of the believers, as a slave? And that was his argument. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirms that the wives of the Prophet ﷺ are the mothers of the believers. So he said, do you accept her, your mother, to be a slave under you? They said no. Are we done? Yes, we're done. Next. And as for the removing of his title, Ali radiallahu anh removing the title, he said the Prophet ﷺ did the same thing in Sulh Hudaybiyah. In Sulh Hudaybiyah, the year 6 of Hijrah, the Prophet ﷺ and the companions wanted to go do Umrah. And as they were approaching Mecca, the camel, the Prophet ﷺ stopped. And it wouldn't budge. So they started telling the Prophet ﷺ, what's wrong? Your camel has never done this before. And he said the one who captured the elephants of Al-Fil, the elephants that wanted to go and attack the Kaaba, is the one who stopped this camel. Meaning he's saying this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not going to make it move. So they dismounted and made their camp, etc. Lo and behold, a delegate from Quraysh comes. His name is Suhail. He says, we are not going to let you in, but let's come to terms. And a treaty comes, a peace treaty between Medina and Mecca comes about. And when they were writing this down, Ali radiallahu anhu was writing it for the Prophet ﷺ, and Ali write from the Prophet Rasulullah Muhammad Rasulullah. They said, if we knew you to be the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Messenger of Allah, we wouldn't be at odds with you. We would have believed in you. So the Prophet ﷺ told Ali, take it off. And write from Muhammad ibn Abdullah, from Muhammad the son of Abdullah. So he removed that. So the Prophet ﷺ removed his title. Then it is okay for Ali radiallahu anh to remove his title. No problem. Is that okay? He said, yeah, that's fine. When they were done, and Ibn Abbas got up and left, a good portion, some say 5/6 of the army of the Khawarij went with Ibn Abbas. They left that way. And some say the number was 20,000. A very simple dialogue between a scholar and these individuals protected many people, saved many people from great deviation. After that dialogue, Ali radiallahu anh went and attacked the rest and finished them off, with the exception of a few. So you can see how important knowledge is. Knowledge preserves the faith of Muslims, and knowledge protects Muslims from deviation, from false ideologies. And know, my dear brothers and sisters, know that in every time and place, there's always a deviation trying to make its way in the Muslim community. Always. So you find that scholars throughout history, many of their books are written because they are refuting a type of ideology. Many of them. So Ibn Taymiyyah, 200, 300 volumes he wrote, many of which are refuting the philosophers, as they call themselves, and a very deviant ideology. Imam al-Ghazali, he was complaining about how the scholars have lost the spiritual aspect of their faith. The knowledge has become very dry, as if it's just words in a book, and that's it. There's no spirituality behind it. To give you an example, a faqih, for example, when you study fiqh, the point of fiqh is to learn how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We were created to worship Him. And fiqh tells us how to do that. That is the point of fiqh, how to come closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. By knowing the halal, and knowing the obligations, and knowing the what's forbidden, what's prohibited. What happened at that time, and happens many times, is that spiritual aspect has been taken out, and it's now just a science. So fuqaha, we're becoming more like what we call today lawyers. When it comes to law, it's not about principles, it's not about values, it's not about ethics, it's not about keeping order and keeping the civilization strong. It's about winning a case. And he's complaining about this, saying that a lot of the scholars have lost this part of faith. Well, scholars preserve that. It is through the scholarly literature that we have received our faith. So that is very important. And, we all know our culture is all about being a doctor or an engineer. And add a lawyer too, right? You could add lawyers as well, that's okay. That's it. And as soon as, a kid, a young man, a young lady says, I want to learn Islam. No. What are you going to be a sheikh? Whoa, that's a problem. It's a problem. This is in the Arab world too. Are you going to be a sheikh? It's like, that low class thing. SubhanAllah. Even though it is these people and through them and through their efforts that we have attained our faith. We learn our faith and we learn about it. Also, during the time of Ibn Abbas, you had a lot of political upheaval, a lot of political changes, and you had political figures like Al-Hajjaj, for example, and other people who created a lot of, a lot of distress in the Muslim community. And he was going through all of that. And it's quoted that he said, he recommended to someone that if you are afraid of the sultan, if you're afraid of the political leader, then say this dua. And he says, Allahu Akbar min khalqihi jami'an, Allahu a'azzu mimma akhaf wa ahdar, a'udhu billahi alladhi la ilaha illa hu, mumsiku as-samawati as-sab' an taqa 'ala al-ardi, an taqa'na 'ala al-ardi illa bi'idhnih, min sharri 'abdik فلان وجنوده وأتباعه وأشياعه من الجن والإنس إلهي كن لي جارا من شرهم جل ثناؤك وعز جارك تبارك اسمك ولا إله غيرك. He says, say this, Allahu Akbar min khalqihi jami'a. Now we know what the word Allahu Akbar means. Allah is greater. And when we remember that, really put it in perspective. Put it in perspective in terms of size. We, in terms of this universe, are a speck. We are a dot. This universe that we live in, the first heaven, in comparison to the second heaven, is like a ring in the desert. The second heaven, in comparison to the third heaven, is like a ring in the desert. The third heaven, in comparison to the fourth, in comparison to the fifth, until you get to the seventh, is like a ring in a desert, a ring in a desert, a ring in a desert. And the seventh heaven, in comparison to the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is like a ring in a desert. And how about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Look at how small we are. So Ibn Abbas is teaching us, if you are afraid, and we are living in times where things are all over the place, and Muslims now are afraid of white supremacy and white nationalism. Remember this dua. It's relevant to our times. Allah is greater than all of this. Look how small the enemies of Allah are. I mean, it's like how we look at ants. And we watch them, we observe them, and they're doing all these things, and it looks so organized, and they have hundreds of ants doing what? Just trying to bring some seeds back to their colony. And man, it's so important to them. Look how small they are. Look how insignificant we feel that is. It's just a seed. And they're going to eat from it. That's it. Well, imagine all this world, how insignificant it is to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you are afraid, remember Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater than all of His creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Az, He is more powerful. He is more overpowering than what I am afraid of and I am cautious over. I seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who there is no God besides Him. He is the one who holds the seven heavens from falling down on the earth. SubhanAllah. I mean, this is really fascinating. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this in the Quran. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُمْسِكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ أَن تَزُولَ وَلَئِنْ زَالَتَا إِنْ أَمْسَكَهُمَا مِنْ أَحَدٍ مِنْ بَعْدِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who holds the heavens from falling apart. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala were to let it go, nothing, no one can hold it at all. And to elaborate on that, there is a athar, a narration that Musa ﷺ asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if he sleeps. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches Musa and says, do you want to know what happens if I were to sleep? Hold two bottles, glass bottles like this, and just keep holding it. And of course, with time, he started falling asleep, dozing off, until what? He let go of the bottles, and they went to pieces. He said, Musa, if I were to sleep, that's what would happen to this universe. SubhanAllah. And look at how massive it is. So we seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala refuge in Him from the evil of so-and-so and his armies and those who follow him and those who are part of his faction. Whether they are jinn or ins or human beings, my Lord or my God, be a jar to me. Be a supporter of mine. That's one of the meanings of jar. a supporter, someone who helps another person. Be a helper of me, a support me to face their evils. Jalla thana'uk. Glorious is your praise. Wa'azza jaruk, and overpowering is your support. Wa tabarak ismuk, and blessed are your names. And there is no God besides you. Very important. Memorize this. It's very empowering. And subhanAllah, the more a person knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more great they see Allah, the more insignificant. And I don't mean insignificant in terms of disrespectfully. The more insignificant they see the world around them and the people, no matter how strong. And just to give an example of that, I mean, someone like Ibn Taymiyyah, it's mind-boggling the courage that he had. I mean, he went by himself, and met the leader, of the general of the Mongol army that's about to invade Damascus, by himself. And the reputation of these people was not good. These are violent people, they kill. He went by himself and started reprimanding him and telling him, no, this and that. And another incident, he goes and starts reprimanding another Mongol leader. And his students are with him. And it said that his students started pulling up their gowns because they were afraid. They thought that the leader is going to chop his head off and the blood is going to go everywhere. That's what they thought. But he leaves. I think Ibn Kathir is the one who mentions this story. And they asked him, how did you do that? And he said, I kept remembering how great Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is until I saw him like a cat. SubhanAllah. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Musa alayhi salam to go to Fir'aun, right? Ibn Kathir comments on this and tells, Allah is telling Musa alayhi salam that Fir'aun's forehead is in my hands. He cannot do anything to harm you except by my permission. And look, Musa alayhi salam was at it with Fir'aun for decades. And nothing happened. Nothing happened to Musa alayhi salatu wasalam. So, the more a person has knowledge, the more they're able to internalize the teachings, and the more powerful they become, the more courageous they become. Like Ibn Abbas radiallahu an. I mean, let's just be honest. If I were to ask one of you to go to the ISIS and talk to them, does anyone be willing to do it? Right? I don't blame them. It's quite scary because they have no mercy. Blood to them is very easy. As Ibn Umar radiallahu anh says, they come and ask him if the blood of a mosquito is impure. And he says, Subhanallah, they killed Ali and they're asking about the blood of a mosquito. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh passes away in the year 68 Hijrah. So about 55 years after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, and he died at the age of 81. So he experienced quite a bit. And when you look at the story of Ibn Abbas, the main lesson is the importance of scholarship. Really, the importance of scholarship. Why is a scholar important? Because the knowledge he holds or she holds is important. It's not about the individual. We need to get ourselves out of the Western frame where it's about these celebrities and who they are and what they wore today and their hairstyle and what kind of car they drive, what kind of food they like. It's not about the person. It's about the knowledge that they hold. Ibn Abbas is just a name. But what made Ibn Abbas who he was the knowledge that he held. That's why he was important. That's what made him who he was. So it's about the importance, it's about knowledge. And to give you a little bit of an idea of the role of scholars in greater society, the Prophet ﷺ, in a hadith narrated by Imam Ahmad, says that the scholars of this ummah are like the stars of the heavens, or the stars of the heavens are the stars of the earth are scholars. What does that mean? Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayh comments on this and says, if you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes three functions of stars. Number one, they give light. Number two, they are used to navigate. So back in the day, people would know astronomy to be able to determine where they are on Earth, especially if they're in the ocean. So based on the constellations, based on certain stars, they know what direction they're going. So they use it to be guided. And number 3, they beautify the sky. I mean, the more stars that you could see in the sky, the more beautiful it is. Like that, the more scholars there are in a place, the more beautiful Islam becomes. The more scholars there are, the more guided the Muslims are. So Muslims go to scholars to seek guidance, to tell them what to do. And finally, the third function is that they are used to, stars are used, like meteors, to break apart the jinn. And the jinn would go up in the sky and try to steal or spy on the angels. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send a meteor, and sometimes he describes it as a star, to break that apart. Scholars break apart the innovations and the misconceptions of those who are deviant, and the shayateen. And in a athar, it is said that the shaitan keeps building an innovation, building a deviance, building it until one scholar comes and breaks it all apart. All the effort goes by one scholar. That's what it is. That's why it's so important to have a scholar in your midst. It is important to have a relationship with a scholar. And now the next question comes. Well, how do we know who a scholar is? There are so many imams, so many people with beards. And man, they come from as far right and as far left as you can imagine. Osama bin Laden has a beard this long, yet he has no problem killing women and children. No problem. And you have shuyukh whose beards are this long and white and gray, and mashallah, people are prostrating to him. How do we know who a scholar is? It's actually not that hard. It's not that hard. How do we know if this person is a qualified physician? Well, how do we know he's trained?
They go to school
and they get a what? They get a diploma, right? A certificate. They are approved by a board. Well, that's the same system that they had in Islamic sciences. It's called ijazat. It's called the ijazah. How do we know so-and-so is a scholar? Because the senior scholars have said so. The senior scholars who already developed a reputation. We know Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi is a scholar. We know Sheikh Abdullah bin Bay is a scholar. When they say that so-and-so is a scholar, well, we trust their judgment. That's how we know. So Imam Malik, before he started giving fatwa, got the approval of 70 scholars who said that you are qualified to give fatwa. That's how we know. That's how we know. And by the way, he was 17 when this happened. 17. SubhanAllah. May Allah, who are we, SubhanAllah? So that's one way of knowing. By seeking the information from senior and well-known scholars. Go to Dr. Muzammil and say, look at all these imams. If I need something, who should I go to? And that's what one female companion asked the Prophet ﷺ. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I have a question. Or if I have a question, can I come and ask you? She says yes. And then she says, what if I don't find you? Look at how wise she is. Because one day the Prophet ﷺ is going to die. What if I don't find you? He said, then ask Abu Bakr. So ask those who are reputable, who they should go to, if they are not present. Another way of knowing a scholar is by what we call Q&A, open Q&A. When you have a group of people and they're asking random questions, it's not a particular topic, it's not on a subject that was just given. It's an open Q&A. You have people who are going to ask about fiqh, people who are going to ask about tafsir, people who are going to ask about hadith, people who are going to ask about the Arabic language, people who are going to ask about theology. They're all asking, and there's no way to prepare for this. And the scholar's answer, or the person's answering, and giving the evidences, right? Well, what can we say about that person? Well, they know what they're talking about. They're a scholar. But those who are, no Q&A. No, I don't want Q&A. Well, we have to ask, why are they unwilling to do that Q&A? And in this, Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi says that a scholar is known by number 1, reputation, that the people know him or her to be a scholar. And number 2, bitasaddur, by standing in front of the people and answering their questions, like this, Q&A. Another way of finding a scholar, scholars call to Allah. They don't call to anyone else. Again, scholars call to Allah. They don't call to anyone else. They call to the Quran. They don't call to any other book. They call to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Look and really look at this. Because it comes from the Quran. قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلِي أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ. This is my path. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, tell them, this is my path, I call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these scholars are the inheritors of prophets. They continue their work through their scholarship, through their knowledge. Where can you find scholars? Well, where does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that He is revered and remembered? In the masajid. Scholars, you find them in masajid, because this is the heart of Islam. This is where Islam grows. This is where Islam is taught. This is where people come to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And therefore you'll find the scholars here. Because a scholar is someone not only who knows, but applies what they know. A scholar isn't someone who has a big head, has a big mind. They are someone who is spiritual and pious as well. You will find them here. Now that doesn't negate that there are universities and whatnot. But where knowledge really is in masajid. Because that's where the scholars go to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh, is one time walking through the market. And he says, hey everyone, did you hear? Like what? He said they are distributing the inheritance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're distributing it's in the masjid. You'll find people distributing the inheritance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, these people are in the market. They left everything. We're going to go make some money. They go, and then they come back. And they go to Abu Hurairah. So what are you talking about? We didn't find anything there. So what do you find? So we found some shuyukh, some scholars teaching Islam. So that is the inheritance of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You find them in masajid. And don't fall into this, well, where is female contribution to a scholarship? There's a very simple very simple response to this. Look at the biography of these scholars. Look at their teachers. You will find that they have female teachers there. Ibn Taymiyyah and Ibn Qayyim were taught by a female scholar of hadith. Ibn Asakir, it said that he had 80 female scholars teaching him. 80. So this idea that there were no females in scholarship, that is a myth. It is a false myth being spewed by people who probably haven't read a single book in Arabic. And they're going around spreading this. And it's said, my teacher told me once, because he knows a lot about Palestine and Jordan and the history. He said in a particular village in Palestine, I don't know the time, I forgot the village, there were 40 female jurists, fuqaha, giving fatwa in Palestine, in one village. So don't buy into this whole feminist argument where females don't have any contribution to Islamic scholarship. It's completely false. So this is Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala an. Really, the benefit from his life comes from the lessons that we can derive from it, more so than the events that happened. Ibn Abbas was someone who wielded knowledge, and that was something very praiseworthy. And that gave him reputation, that gave him respect, and it kept his name alive. We all know Ibn Abbas, more so than other companions. Not because he was necessarily better than them, because he preserved the faith, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved his name. And you notice that scholars who preserve the faith, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves their name centuries after they pass away. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us benefit from the story of Ibn Abbas, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to teach us or help us understand the faith and make us among those who understand tafsir as well. Jazakumullah khair.
لا إله إلا الله